Okay, let me see. I don't think it's going to take 10 minutes to disprove the existence of God. The atheist proposition is the following. Most of the time, it may not be said that there is no God. It may be said that there is no reason to think that there is one. That was the situation after Lucretius and Democritus and the original anti-theistic thinkers began their critique of religion. And I would just ask you all, ladies and gentlemen, to bear in mind a mild distinction while we go on. You may wish to be a deist, as my heroes Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine were, and you may not wish to abandon the idea that there must be some sort of first or proximate cause or prime mover of the known and observable world and universe. But even if you can get yourself to that position, which we unbelievers maintain is always subject to better and more perfect and more elegant explanations, even if you can get yourself to that position, all your work is still ahead of you. To go from being a deist to a theist, in other words, from someone who says, God cares about you, knows who you are, minds what you do, answers your prayers, cares which bits of your penis or clitoris you saw away or have sawn away for you, minds who you go to bed with and in what way, minds what holy days you observe, minds what you eat, minds what positions you use for pleasure. All your work is still ahead of you, and lots of luck. Because there's nobody, even Aquinas had to give it up. There's no one who can move from the first position to the second. So I could, and I'm actually strongly tempted to, I could leave it right there. But then it's not in my nature to let off a captive audience so easily. So I'll add a couple of things. The reasons why I am glad this is not true would, I suppose, be the gravamen of my case. Some people I know who are atheists will say they wish they could believe it. Some people I know who are former believers say they wish they could have their old faith back. They miss it. I don't understand this at all. I think it's an excellent thing that there's no reason to believe in the absurd propositions I just, admittedly rather briefly, rehearsed to you. The main reason for this, I think, is that it is a totalitarian belief. It is the wish to be a slave. It is the desire that there be an unalterable, unchallengeable, tyrannical authority who can convict you of thought crime while you are asleep, who can subject you, who must indeed subject you, to a total surveillance around the clock, every waking and sleeping minute of your life, I say of your life, before you're born, and, even worse, and where the real fun begins, after you're dead. A celestial North Korea. Who wants this to be true? Who but a slave desires such a ghastly fate? I've been to North Korea. It has a dead man as its president. Kim Jong-il is only head of the party and head of the army. He's not head of the government or the state. That office belongs to his deceased father, Kim Il-sung. It's a necrocracy, a thanatocracy. It's one short of a trinity, I might add. The son is the reincarnation of the father. It is the most revolting and utter and absolute and heartless tyranny the human species has ever evolved. But at least you can fucking die and leave North Korea. Does the Quran or the Bible offer you that liberty? No. No. The tyranny, the misery, the utter ownership of your entire personality, the smashing of your individuality only begins at the point of death.
The question about the line-drawing Jew, the practice of religion being about the tone of living, a framework, and about self-restraint.
Well, that's dead easy, just like the rabbi just now. His religion is man-made too. He decides what he'd like to believe. It's a la carte. He says, shouldn't my children be taught what was it, self-restraint, responsibility, care for others, and so on. I don't believe in the rest of it, don't believe in the prophets, don't believe in the mountaintop, don't believe in the revelation. Well, nor should you. But how dare you suggest to us that we couldn't teach our children self-restraint and respect for others and the golden rule? How dare you? It seems to me a violation of the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment that any religious institution can receive any payment from the United States government. I would regard being tax-exempt or tax-free as a disguised form of subsidy, as I regard the so-called faith-based initiative to be a surreptitious violation of the same. I should say for sincere believers that there's an excellent reason why the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment was first proposed. It wasn't proposed just by people like myself who wouldn't go any further than deism in their attitude to religion. It was proposed by many people who were quite devout and who thought not just that the government must not be corrupted by religion, but that the churches mustn't be corrupted by this association with the state either. And I think that's an equally morally valid point. James Madison, the co-author of the Virginia Statute on Religious Freedom and of the First Amendment and the other things that bodyguard our wonderful Republican secular constitution, didn't think there should be chaplains to open Congress, didn't even think there should be chaplains in the armed forces. If people want to pray in the army, they can. No one can stop them, but we're not going to pay for someone to pray over them. These are very tough questions, but it must be understood that these were part of the very urgent views of the framers and the founding fathers, and it's our responsibility to be discussing this very seriously now at a time when Hillary Clinton has joined some reactionary evangelical organization, John McCain, to try and bolster her faith-based connections. John McCain, a lifelong Episcopalian, has this year, I wonder why, said he's a Baptist. And Barack Obama, Senator Obama, has been caught in some big-mouthed, sinister, windbag, rock and roll horror show church on the South Side. Religion is poisoning our election and our democratic republic, and it's time that we've said enough. If you want to be a fraud and a fundraiser and a shakedown artist and a big mouth and an ethno-racist in this country, try your best. But it's long past time that we said putting Reverend in front of your name is not enough of an achievement to do that. You who believe in the material world and don't believe in the supernatural, you can't account for the experiences of revelation and enlightenment and miracles that other people experience. And you don't understand the numinous, in other words. And I say that that's true for me. I don't. And I don't trust them, though I do think they can be confused with experiences of nature, landscape, music, sex and love, the numinous in other ways. But if these experiences, the positive ones, are going to be credited to the religion account, then so must the person who says that God told him to go and get a gun and kill all the unveiled girls in neighboring streets. If all these things are going to be charged, they've all got to be charged. I actually don't like the Sistine Chapel. I didn't like it even before I knew that every brick of St. Peter's was raised by the sale of indulgences, which obviously changes nothing for Dr. Scruton either, by a special sale of indulgences, by the way. But I do like the Parthenon very much, and I've written a book about it. And I think as an achievement of artistic symmetry and architectural glory, it probably has no Christian rival. But I believe that I can. In fact, I know I can. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has been there and said and appreciated and loved it without having to subscribe to the superstitions of the Eleusinian mysteries, to the cult of Athena and Zeus, to the Melian expedition and the Peloponnesian War, to slavery and Athenian imperialism, and to human sacrifice. We can have our Parthenon, and we can indeed recover it from what was done to it by Byzantine Ottomans, by Venetian Catholics, by National Socialist barbarians and many others. We can still have it. It's our common property without the superstitions that go with it, without the dread and fear and sacrifice, the terrified, cringing humanity that was so much sheltered under the walls as it was being raised. And the word for that, the ability to have these things, to have John Milton's poetry, to have Philip Larkin's poem Church-Going, to have Shakespeare, without the superstition, is called culture, on which we've all laid our lives, on which we've all sworn to defend ourselves and our civilization against, especially now, precisely against religious barbarism, against those who know they are right, against those who say they only need one book, against those who say they know God's on their side, against those who say there's a revelation. That's what culture is, that's what we're defending. Yes, we'd be better off with culture, and yes, we can have it without religion, which is a mind-forged manacle. Thanks.
Thank you.
It's in my interest that people don't suffer. I don't want someone bleeding to death from AIDS on my doorstep. Not just for their sake, for mine I don't want that. Oscar Wilde in The Soul of Man Under Socialism puts it very beautifully. He says socialism would free us from the awful necessity of living for others. George Bernard Shaw, when he ran for office in London, said there should be no more houses built for the working classes without baths. And it was objected to him by the Tories and the Conservatives. They said, why give them baths? The poor are so ignorant and stupid, they won't even know how to use them. They'll keep coal in them. They don't deserve baths. You're wasting your compassion on them. He said, I don't want them to have a bath for their sake. I want them to have a bath for my sake. That's the right mix of self-interest and morality. And it works too. It works. It works. Whereas religious exhortation and telling people, telling children that if they don't do the right thing, they'll go to terrifying punishments or unbelievable rewards, that's making a living out of lying to children. That's what the priesthood do. And if all they did was lie to the children, it would be bad enough. But they rape them and torture them and then hope we'll call it abuse. No, the priesthood must get out of the way for this argument to become grown up. That evolution occurred is conclusively verified by the record of molecular biology and of fossil record. There has never been an article in any peer-reviewed journal, and there never will be, to say to the contrary. However, that's only to say that it did occur. How it occurred is not something that's completely consensual, and the Darwinian theory of natural selection is only so far the least contested of those explanations. And Stephen Jay Gould, for example, of whom I was something of a friend and a great admirer, and Richard Dawkins, who's also a friend of mine, had a tremendous disagreement, still do, posthumous in the case of now, about punctuated evolution, about the steps by which this occurred. But that it occurred is not to be doubted. And thus the idea that there can be equal time for the opposite theory in a science class is as false as to say, well, children, the chemistry period is over, now after the break we'll be doing our alchemy class. Or your astronomy teacher is off today, but your astrology alternate can check in. Nonsense. And when President Bush says we should teach the argument, I'm with him, if he's sincere, because everything I know about the Darwin argument comes from two great set-piece debates. One in Oxford in the late Victorian epoch between Bishop Wilberforce and Thomas Huxley, the inventor of the term agnostic, about Darwinism, and the second in Tennessee in the 1920s, even more famous. But if the president wants that, and he wants his faith-based initiative, then every church that gets a subsidy or a grant must also teach Darwinism. Equal time. Is that what the president wants? I am sure I know the answer to that. We don't want people to live without wonder or mystery, and in fact we thoroughly recommend. Take a look through the Hubble telescope. See if you can get over what you see, the unbelievable beauty and symmetry and majesty of what you'll see. And you want to exchange this for the burning bush? I don't think you will once you've done it. Read a page of Stephen Hawking on the event horizon, for example, and see if that isn't awe-inspiring enough for anybody. And you're seeing there the future of a potentially much more noble and ennobled and enlightened and emancipated humanity, where none of these discoveries and none of this awe and majesty requires that you kill anyone in the name of some man-made idol or god or superstition. For heaven's sake, let's get this out of the way.
Roger Cruden.
I'm going to assume I know what you mean by fundamentalist. So if we take the best-known current political dispute in which this country is involved, I suppose, and the oldest one and the best understood, it would probably be the question of Palestine, okay? Where there has been for some time a conflict between two nationalisms, approximately equivalent size of peoples, Jewish and Arab, over a piece of land about the size of Wales, with great and quite just claims, emotionally just claims on both of their parts going back quite a long time. For a long time now, the solution to this very difficult matter has seemed to many people to be something like a partition, an award of roughly half each of the disputed territory. It's not perfect, it's not great, but it is the accepted view of the PLO now, of most of the Israeli voting public, of the vast majority of American Jews, of the UN, of the European Union, of the international community, and so on. And it makes a rough kind of sense. It's not brilliant, but it's thinkable. It's not insane. Why can't we get what everyone seems to want? Because of religion. That's why. Because there are enough people on the Jewish side to say, what land split? God gave all this land to us. All of it to us. And on the other side, it doesn't take much to say, you're dead right about that. God did award all the land, but not to you, to the Muslims only. And there are enough of them to make certain there cannot be a solution. And just as if that wasn't enough, the mad supporters of Judaism and the mad supporters of Islam, the American Christians to the rescue. With luck, if the Jews can be supported long enough, as our rope supports the hanging man, they can bring on the Battle of Armageddon, the thing we all secretly yearn for, as all religions do. Totalitarian first in their origin, genocidal in their conclusions. We want this to be over. We want this world to pass away. We are pointless without that demand. We are not humanists. We are eschatologists. And hey, what could be more wonderful? The Jews will bring it on, and those who aren't converted in time to Christianity will be turned to ash, as will everybody else. So what could be more heavenly than that? So now you see why religion poisons everything. These congregations and their religions and the filthy texts on which they base themselves earnestly desire that everything we call civilization, and everyone in this room, be destroyed. They want it, they relish it, they work for it while you're asleep, as well as while you're awake. Coexistence with this kind of thing is as impossible as coexistence with fascism or Stalinism. The sooner we wake up to it, the better our chances of survival will be.
Thank you, Christopher.
Because religion is not provided to us by revelation. It doesn't come from the heavens. It doesn't come from the beyond. It doesn't come from the divine. It's man-made. And it shows. It shows very well that religion is created, invented, imposed by a species half a chromosome away from the chimpanzee. It shows, doesn't it? Well, why do we deceive ourselves on this point? And is there anywhere, I'm now going to wind up, is there anywhere of the places I've mentioned, and I exempt Basra and all the other B's I could take you around, where it wouldn't be enormously welcome if there was a mass conversion to secularism, or a mass adoption of the secular idea and principle, of the principles of Bertrand Russell, who once spoke famously from this platform, of Thomas Paine, of Thomas Jefferson, of Voltaire, and others. And I'll close by saying that I want you to be on your guard against two false issues in this respect, and I'll be very brief. When I mentioned those gentlemen, and I could mention some ladies too in this connection, like Mary Wollstonecraft, don't let anyone tell you that, oh, well, secular tyranny is just as bad. After all, there have been fascist and communist dictatorships which have been just as revolting. Fascism, as you know, was supported by the Catholic Church all through its life, and in fact till after it had died, and still is defended by it. One of the leaders of the Axis was actually, the Japanese leader, was actually a god. There's no way of saying fascism and National Socialism in the Axis was secular. And in the case of Stalinism and Maoism and the Khmer Rouge, the same mistake is made, and a religion is made out of man. It's the religious impulse itself that I think we need to oppose, to criticize in ourselves as well as in others. The argument from faith, in other words, the argument from certainty. So those of us who maintain this may not be described, my closing point, as fundamentalists or secularists, as certain cheap and demagogic and opportunist forces have recently been suggesting. We do believe in evidence, we do believe in skepticism, we do believe in reason. We hold our views with as much conviction and principle as any God-botherer does. But we are open to the argument, and we're going to prove it tonight to you. And don't let anyone dare to imply there's a moral equivalence between us and the fanatics and the fools and those who think they know God's will and can tell you what it is, who are our enemies, and your enemies too. So, I beg to propose the motion that stands in our name. Thank you. Now, for there to be a fair test about this, you'd have to do the following. And no one I've ever debated with has even tried it. So you be the first. You find me a state or a society that threw off theocracy and threw off religion and said we adopt the teachings of Lucretius and Democritus and Galileo and Spinoza and Darwin and Russell and Jefferson and Thomas Paine. And we make those what we teach our children. We make that scientific and rational humanism our teaching. And you find me that state that did that and fell into tyranny and slavery and famine and torture, and then we'll be on a level playing field. As it is, all you've done is show that the idea of worship and the idea of credulity and the idea of servility and slavery to religion is a bad idea in the first place.
But none of the czars and none of the Chinese kings, none of this.
By the way, the Russian Orthodox Church always stayed with Stalin,
But they never killed 30% of their population.
Who didn't?
The Russians never killed 30% of the population before the communists took over, 20 or 30%. No czar ever did that. No Christian czar ever did any killing on anyone.
Well, no, excuse me, they started the First World War, they started the pogroms, they brought the protocols of the Elders of Zion that was imported by Tsarist secret policemen to National Socialist Christian gangsters in Europe. How much do you think the export of Russian Orthodox anti-Semitism cost us in point of lives and war? And have you ever counted up what happened to the wars that Tsarism started and carried on, and the persecutions, and the famines, and the tortures, and the starvation, and the people who just died of neglect? Come on. You want to do this accounting, I'm here. I'm really here for you. Or what the Serbian Orthodox and the Russian Orthodox have just done in the Balkans. The most recent genocide we've seen in Europe, entirely done by a Russian and Serbian Orthodox fascists and Catholic Croatian Ustasha, grinding a whole part of civilized Europe into nothingness and bloodshed for their filthy, stupid medieval quarrels. How dare you say that any secularist, we who've opposed this kind of barbaric stuff, are on all fours with these creeps? You should take it back. You owe me an apology. You lose, Boychik. You lose, Boychik.
Please. Hey, civility. Civility.
Civility is overrated. Every modern state has had to go through a period of declericalization of one kind of violence or another. the Cromwellian Revolution, the Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries, the wars in Spain, the wars in Italy, the French Revolution, which you mentioned, they all have to go through it. It's usually in proportion to how vile, how filthy, how cruel, how tyrannical, how greedy, how ghastly was the pre-existing clerical regime on which much of this must be blamed. But you can't say that the test of humanistic, secular, atheist values has been conducted until you've had that conducted fairly. Hitler's birthday was celebrated from the pulpit by order of the Vatican, by every church in Germany, till the last day of his regime. Do I say that makes you a National Socialist? No, I don't. No, I don't. I would know how to if I was capable of a low blow. But as you know, I'm not.